Hello friends, good to see you again. I'm Alex with the Unprofessional Opinion channel, and today I'm starting a new series called Experts Weapons, where I go over some firearms that are considered to be challenging or unforgiving to use and shoot on a regular basis, especially for new shooters. And today we're starting off with the Detonics Combat Master. This one is in 45 ACP, dates back to the 1980s. I mean, these guns were originally designed in the 1960s and really are considered to be the first subcompact 1911s. These are designed by a gentleman who worked for an explosives company called Detonics. He basically made them for himself. And then once he left Detonics, his company decided they really liked this design and decided to produce them for the open commercial market, along with several other 1911 variants, most of which have the word Master in their title. This gun was most prominently featured on Miami Vice. This was Sonny Crockett's backup gun. And it's got some very interesting features for a 1911. It lacks a barrel bushing. The barrel is belled out, so that barrel bushing is not required, which makes the gun simpler and easier to disassemble. It has a dual captive recoil spring mechanism, an extended slide release and safety, as well as the scallop in the back of the slide, which allows for the gun to be carried with the hammer down on a loaded chamber. And what you do is that on your draw stroke, you slide your thumb down the scallop to actuate the hammer and to quickly bring the gun into action. If you want more history on the Detonics, Forgotten Weapons did an excellent video on these firearms a few years back, and I'll have that linked in the description. And the reason why I picked this gun for today is that in our modern shooting world, the subcompact 1911 is seen as a meme, where they're seen as very impractical, way too powerful for their size, and they typically have some reliability issues due to the way they're set up. And most shooters worth their salt won't trust a 1911 that's smaller than commander size. But since I picked this gun up, I'm a big fan of 80s firearms. I wanted to see just how awful it would be to use in a somewhat practical environment. And I felt the best way to do that is to use it in an action pistol match. And common sense would dictate that I use this in an IDPA match in the backup gun division. But unfortunately, IDPA has gone the way of the dodo in my area. And so I'm going to be using this in an indoor match, which is 3 stages in length. Uses hit factor scoring like in USPSA, but the way the bays are set up, they're typically shorter stages and have much closer in targets than a typical USPSA field course, which will hopefully make it easier to run this gun in the single stack division. Single stack is already hard enough with a standard 1911. Can't wait to see how a 3-inch 1911 that barely fits in my hands runs in this match. So I'll film all 3 stages. It'll just be me shooting, no commentary, and then once I'm done, I will give my conclusion and where I placed in practice score. So stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy.
Ready. Stand by. Oh no. by. Shoot if you're done and load so clear.
So now that the match is over, let's go over some pros and cons of this weapon. We'll start with the pros. So a big pro right off the bat is the trigger. This handgun has an excellent trigger. I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less from a decently made 1911, but I was honestly very surprised at how good the trigger is, both in practice, dry fire, and in the competition. Very crisp break, like the stereotypical glass rod. I'd say it's about a 3.5 to 4 pound break. Fortunately, I don't have a pull gauge with me, so I can't measure that for you guys. And also has a very crisp and tactile reset. Quite excellent. Had no issues with that. Another big pro is the sights. Oh, they're very big, very squared off. Were easy to pick up, especially with those close range targets you see me shoot in those two shorter stages. And also had no trouble at all picking up the longer range targets on that 15-yard stage. That really does it for the pros. I mean, the controls also are quite large, which was nice, but at the same time, they're even though they're extended, they were not very easy to manipulate and are honestly kind of stiff. So that's kind of both a pro and a con. Let's go to straight cons. Definitely had a lot of malfunctions for this weapon, and that mostly has to do with the magazines. So I only had one proprietary magazine for this gun, and it worked all right. I had one malfunction with it. I was mostly using these older USGI magazines because I just happen to have them on hand. And the problem with these and any other magazines besides the proprietary ones is that they hang a little bit out of the magazine well, and if you press on them at all, it will cause the gun to malfunction a little bit. Especially, I had these 10-round Chip McCormick magazines, which are excellent magazines for full-size 1911s. And I tried not to use these in the match because I was going for more of a practical, everyday carry setup for this gun. So I wanted to use the proprietaries and the USGIs because that's typically what you'd probably carry in a gun like this. And honestly, 10-round Chip McCormick looks hilarious in a small gun like this. I ended up having to use them on that last stage, on the long-range portion, because I just ran out of ammo in the other in the USGI mags. So these have the same problem. It's actually worse, where if in your standard firing grip, if you press on this at all, there's too much play between the magazine and the feed ramp, and it will induce a malfunction. So that's something to keep in mind if you want to carry a subcompact 1911. Is definitely take a look at your magazines. Especially if you're running something like this where they have proprietary magazines. You don't want to go around and use magazines that are not really made for the gun, and that's pretty well common sense. Another con is the grip. So it's a very short grip. As you can see, my pinky barely hangs onto the front strap there, but it's also very wide because it is in 45 ACP, and it has these original factory Pachmeyer grips, which were very popular in the 1980s, but are not so popular now. and it was definitely difficult to get a good firing grip. I could definitely feel, even though I was gripping this very tightly, I could definitely feel it shift. And that goes into my next con, which is recoil. Recoil wasn't unmanageable, it wasn't painful either. But the muzzle on this gun flips like nothing else. If you'll see in the match footage, every time you see the gun recoil, it comes up like this, which is honestly not great. It definitely had difficulty with follow-up shots using this gun. Whereas typically, if I was using something in the same size but in 9mm 380, I wouldn't have had as much trouble. So that really does it for conclusion. For pros and cons at least. So I'm going to interject my unprofessional opinion here, and that's this gun does work. You can make this work for a practical setting, whether it's everyday carry or competition, but there are so many other better options out there where, like, this is actually a very nice gun for a subcompact 1911. Being that it was the first subcompact 1911 designed to hit the commercial market. And it's pretty subpar. In my opinion, it's very subpar in a practical sense. And there are other guns that mimic this weapon that are probably much worse. So if you want a gun this size, I recommend going with something like a Smith & Wesson Shield or a Glock 43X. I'm not a huge fan of SIG USA for basically my own personal reasons with the in terms of preference with controls and grip size. But if you wanted to go that route, you could always get a SIG P365. Those have improved a lot over the years and would be a much better carry than this. So thank you for tuning in, guys. Appreciate you supporting the channel. Stay safe out there, and you're all great Americans, no matter what they say about you.